Welcome to episode 48 of Pinnacle FC, Club World Cup Final Edition. Yes, we're finally here. Gareth Wheeler, Jake Osgathorpe with you as we're going to break down PSG against Chelsea. Two European title winners. One happened to be the Champions League, the other the Conference League. But here we are. It's very much in the spirit of the Club World Cup. This first revamped edition, Jake, what do you make of it? How we got here, and maybe where the tournament goes from here?
Yeah, I think it's been an enjoyable tournament. I think there was a huge concern from quite a lot of people on these shows that it would just turn into a mini Champions League, and it kind of did on one side of the bracket, but the way in which the group stage unfolded meant that the other side of the bracket was quite open in terms of South American teams doing quite well. Obviously, we had Al Hilal getting quite far into the competition, so I think that is definitely a strength of the tournament, is that if that can happen every time. I think that's quite exciting because you do get teams with unfamiliar names, unfamiliar faces. Not dissimilar to World Cups, where you get some breakout stars and players that catch the eye, and teams that you probably aren't used to seeing but do well. And I think that's ultimately where football's at its best, because everybody loves the underdog. And heading into this tournament, everyone not from Europe was the underdog. So it was good to see some of them get quite far. Obviously, Fluminense made it all the way to the semi-finals, but we have got an all-European final, which I think we expected. And the prices on a European winner heading into the tournament were extortionately short, so it's no surprise. But it has been enjoyable. Obviously, there's the question marks around all the sort of climate stuff, suspensions of games and how that could potentially impact the World Cup next year. But in terms of the Club World Cup as itself, I think the only way they can make it better is just invite a few more teams that are relevant at the time of the tournament. Something we've discussed previously, where you've got title winners like Liverpool aren't there this year, and they might not be there next year because it's obviously based on European competition. But I think that would probably be the only small tweak I've made. I don't know how you do that, but it was quite fitting that you had Chelsea in the semi-final playing against Fluminense, and the only player on the pitch that at the start of the game that played for Chelsea when they won the Champions League was Thiago Silva, who played for Fluminense.
Yeah. I kind of think it's too late for American football stadiums to get on the Qatar train, the air-conditioned outdoor stadiums. I mean, that technology hasn't flowed yet. That would solve a lot of problems. Other things I'd put in the suggestion box, to your point, how you qualify for this tournament, it needs to be streamlined as to what happens more recent. So you get the best teams now rather than the best teams 3 or 4 years ago. The timing of games has been an awkward one. 3 p.m. local time, especially during midweek, does nothing to bring out a local fan base. And perhaps not having the competition in America would help as well. It's a saturated fan base, just in terms of the sports market. I think maybe hosting some of these tournaments elsewhere where it's really the football first, just to kind of give it a little bit more momentum before you go back stateside next time around. But other than that, I think it's been decent enough. I think the football's been watchable enough. And just this is the only time that they can stage the tournament, really. So it's going to be awkward between postseason, preseason commitments. It's just the world of football. It's just the reality of what we deal with. Let's dig straight in to the upcoming final. It's going to be played this Sunday between PSG and Chelsea. PSG have steamrolled two European giants in the knockout round on their way to this final. 2-0 against Bayern Munich, 4-0 against Real Madrid. Former PSG player Kylian Mbappe making his former manager Luis Enrique look great in terms of his assessment and what's required to play in a PSG team. PSG did lose, just like Chelsea, a game in the group stage of this tournament, but they've only conceded once, and it was in the group stage to Botafogo. That is it. Other than that, they've been comprehensive. This midfield of Vitinha, Ruiz, and Neves, I mean, it just works. It's a fit. And PSG being able to accomplish something that very few teams, especially in the modern day game, can really experience, and that is balance throughout the team. They play well together. They play within the system, and there's no perceived weakness whatsoever. The 4-0 against Real Madrid. Shades of the Champions League final where they completely steamrolled over Inter. They take on a Chelsea side who are on good form. My colleague here, Jake, highlighted João Pedro signing with Chelsea during the tournament. Whether he could play a role, will just happen to score a brace against Fluminense in order to punch their ticket to the final. They lost a game during the group phase as well. Flamengo 3-1, but it's Chelsea who've had the last laugh. It's been a relatively straightforward path to the final, at least much more so than what PSG have faced. 4-1 over Benfica in a delayed game during it, and then Palmeiras 2-1. Tricky opponent, but they managed to deal with that that fixture accordingly. And then, of course, the 2-0 victory over Fluminense. I think the highlight for this Chelsea team is their midfield as well. Fernandes, Caicedo, Palmer, excellent. Maybe a midfield trio that can contest and really provide, some questions asked to this PSG side as well. And Enzo Maresca's side, of course, winning the Conference League final, really good in tournament football, kind of suits his managerial style as well. Through this, and just when we're looking at the markets for this one, it's no surprise on Pinnacle, BetSmart, Bet Pinnacle, PSG are the favorites to win the final. No matter how, whether it's pens or otherwise, minus 297 for PSG, plus 244 on Pinnacle for Chelsea. For PSG to win in 90 minutes, minus 159. To play to a draw, plus 329 and plus 425 if you want to back Chelsea outright in the 90 minutes. The handicap is set at 1. The over at plus 105, or if you want to take PSG on the handicap at plus 105, plus 1 handicap Chelsea is minus 116, and the total is set at 3, over at minus 103, under at minus 110. I think this one is maybe priced appropriately, perhaps. I mean, I'm a little bit maybe surprised that PSG aren't even a bigger favorite than they are into this one. For me, it's more about how good PSG are, and it's no disrespect to Chelsea as well, but we'll see what Chelsea looks like to start the Premier League season when they get a couple other players into the team, including Estavio, who looks like a pretty decent player that we saw at the Club World Cup as well. What's your angle here? What's the best betting market to follow for this Club World Cup final?
Yeah, it's hard to look past PSG. I did initially at first glance think they were a bit too short. I actually thought they were too short, and the market was showing Chelsea a little bit not enough respect. But the more you dig into the kind of data, the more you dig into just the performances and the eye test, the more you just have to back PSG in some capacity, because they are just ultimately the best team in the world. They're the best team in Europe. They are on an absolute heater at the minute, and I think the beauty about it, obviously, they've had a bit of fortune with injury because they stayed pretty healthy throughout. They obviously had suspensions last time out, but Beraldo came in, was excellent at centre half. But yeah, they're just such a selfless team. Like you said, they've got great balance, but they're so selfless. Like that's one of the main reasons why Enrique wanted to get rid of Mbappe, is because he ultimately, you were playing with 10 when Mbappe was on the pitch, because he wasn't doing the high pressing stuff that Kvaratskhelia does, or that Doué does, or Dembele and Barcola. They're so high pressing, and it is basically it is a team. And I just think that it's when you've got a team that play in that way, that also have an unimaginable amount of quality, it's very difficult to stop. And you don't see it very often where you have that amount of quality that play in such a synchronized way, and everyone's pulling in the same direction. So you just have to back them. Like you said, Chelsea had a very... Like if we'd have gone into this tournament and I'd have told you that Chelsea would play LAFC, Flamengo, ES Tunis, Benfica, Palmeiras, and Fluminense, you'd say, "Oh yeah, they're going to get to the final." Like that, you would have expected that, wouldn't you, from that run of fixtures? Yeah. So they've not really been tested yet, which is a good and a bad thing, because obviously it means we don't know their ceiling, but it does mean that they are probably a bit fresher than PSG coming off the back of Bayern Munich and Real Madrid matches. Though the Real Madrid game was a bit of a walkover. But if you look back a bit further, it's something I've been banging the drum throughout this tournament, really, about Chelsea, is that when they've come up against the best teams in the league this last season, they've not fared very well at all. So against the top 5 teams in the league, in the Premier League, they've lost 5 of the 10 and won just 3. And obviously, like I said, PSG are the best team in Europe by a mile. So yeah, like I said, how to get PSG on side. And for me, it is just sticking with the win to nil trend, because there is the data backs up the fact that PSG have just been so good defensively. We know about their attacking capabilities, but defensively they've been absolutely superb. They've conceded just 3.55 expected goals across 6 matches at the Club World Cup. And that includes playing against Atletico Madrid, Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid, 3 teams that are all at the upper end of the European kind of caliber team. So 0.6 xG per game is what they're conceding. And that is just simply remarkable. And especially the last 2 fixtures against Bayern, just 0.66, a team that features, Kane, Elise, obviously Musiala started for a bit, and, Coman, all those good attacking players. And then Real Madrid, and you've got Vinicius and Mbappe and Bellingham. And to limit them to literally nothing, I think is quite remarkable. And I think that's going to be the case again with Chelsea. They've been better, Chelsea's attack in this tournament, but again, we mentioned they've got a kind schedule, and I just think that they're going to be stifled here. And we mentioned it in the last show as well. The main reason why PSG is so good, in my opinion, are the fullbacks. They're unbelievable. Like they're so good defensively one-on-one. They're so
And the
good
way they
going.
play and the positions they find, and when they do rotate, Jake, the midfield covers so much ground that they're not caught out of place as well. And then you mentioned it, Pacho was out in the last game. He's going to slide right back in for the final. They're fully fit. And I know it's a very remedial way of looking at things. It's not just the way that PSG play. I mean, what player would you take out of the PSG team to replace with the Chelsea player based upon the way that these teams play? I can't pick one. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful for some of the top talent that Chelsea have. Caicedo, Palmer, some really good players there. But this PSG team, it just all the pieces of the puzzle fit together to really complete a perfect picture at this point, Jake.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I wouldn't take any. I mean, the closest is probably Palmer, but then you've got Ruiz, who plays as a 10 and plays as an 8 and plays as a 6. So, you've got such good balance. Yeah, you wouldn't swap any of them. And I think the refreshing thing about PSG that we've seen over the last 6 months is just how direct they are. Like they're basically taking the blueprint of Spain at the Euros, which is get the ball out wide and let the boys run at them. They've got really good dribblers, and as soon as they get the ball, they're running at you. And I think it's catching a lot of teams by surprise, even still, with just how direct they are, because teams are used to get ball to the winger, but winger passes it inside, tries to make a run around the outside, all that. No, we're getting the ball, we're running at you. You're either going to tackle us or foul us, or we're going to beat you. And I just think it's so refreshing. It makes the game so much more exciting. I mean, the last 2 games, the Madrid and Bayern games, have just been such good watches, even at this late stage of the season. Just been so open and so attack-minded. But at the same time, PSG just looks so solid defensively. So yeah, PSG win to nil's the way I'm going. It's plus 219. And I know we're not really discussing outrights, but I've been on PSG for a while, and I know quite a few people have been on PSG. You're in a position now where if you wanted to trade out, you can, because they are so short to win the overall tournament. That if you did want to just have a little bit of a saver on Chelsea just in case, you can. And to be honest, I wouldn't put you off that, because I do think this Chelsea team, they're not at the level of PSG, but I think they're maybe a couple of years away from it. I think that they've got the caliber and the qualities to cause them a few problems potentially. So maybe a little saver on Chelsea. But if you are sitting on a PSG outright, but I would be hugely shocked if Chelsea actually won this final. And yeah, PSG to just crown an unbelievable season with a quadruple that can only be done every 4 years.
Yes. I'll ask you this question. When you say that Chelsea can maybe cause some problems, where do you think they can cause problems here?
I think the midfield can be quite disruptive to PSG's midfield fluidity. I do think that having Caicedo and Fernandes, I think Caicedo in particular is extremely combative, and I think he'll be able to nullify a little bit of what PSG want to do in midfield. I also think the full on the left hand side, Correa, I think he'll do a decent enough job on Doué, but other than that, it is quite difficult with on the other side with Gusto against Kvaratskhelia, and then you look at the heart of the defence. Colwell's going to be back from his suspension, but you've got whether it be Tosin or Chalobah, there's a bit of a weak point. You have got Delap back as well if you wanted to play Delap. I would imagine Pedro's going to start after his fantastic little double against Fluminense. Yeah, I think the way I see it is Chelsea hurting them is just more frustrating them as opposed to taking the game to them and beating them, if that makes sense. So I think they can make it difficult for PSG for an hour or so. But I would be surprised if Chelsea had enough going forward to hurt PSG.
That's what I was kind of asking a leading question, because the other play I was considering was Chelsea not to score at plus 178. And that's the back pocket in case it's Maresca ball. It's very frustrating. It'll be slow. The conditions will be hot. They'll try to perhaps frustrate PSG in that way. And I agree with you in your assessment, but I was just wondering, what was it? Plus 219 to win to nil. Would it be just a safer play to play Chelsea not to score, to fail to score at plus 178? How much of a considerable difference would you weigh in a PSG win in 90 minutes versus a potential 0-0 after 90 minutes, and you just get that out of your back pocket at plus 178? It's something for me that's absolutely worth considering here.
Yeah. No, that was my initial scanning the markets, taking the under, and then saw the under price, and I immediately just thought PSG to win to nil, because I just don't think this Chelsea team will be able to keep a clean sheet. Like I said, I do think the heart of the defence is a weak point. I think the right hand side's a weak point, whether it be Gusto or Reece James. And ultimately, I think it's just going to be wave after wave of pressure. And Chelsea have stretched games a little bit against the Brazilian sides in the last two rounds. And if they do that, I think that's going to cause problems. And then you've got to worry about the overlaps as well of Hakimi and Mendes. And I think eventually there's just a goal that's going to come. So I think it'll be a 1-0, 2-0 PSG game.
And that's the way I'm looking at it as well. And that's why I think it's maybe worth a punt to back the winner and combine with total goals market. PSG and under 2.5 goals is plus 422. So at plus 422, you can get PSG and the under 2.5. Now, you're going to have to be somewhat brave to do that, considering how the Champions League final played out. And that's going to be in many people's minds, the fact that PSG took that early lead. They put their foot down on the pedal, much like they did against Real Madrid in the last phase of this tournament, and just absolutely cruised to victory. That could very well play out. But I kind of think that the context is different based upon the conditions, based upon the location, based upon the opponent. And I think that that's how Enzo Maresca would want things to play out. Just try to control the game, frustrate, slow it down. So PSG and the under 2.5 at plus 422. I'm going to take a stab at that. I'm going to make a play on that. Combined with my second play will be Chelsea to fail to score at plus 178. So we're on the same page, but it just shows you find the preferable market and figure out what works for you, because there's different ways to approach this, Jake. Any other thoughts on this? Potential goal scorers in this game, cards markets, corners, anything else that you may be taking a look at before we wrap up?
I was just having a brief look at corners, because PSG have they've got into a habit recently of not winning a lot of corners. Even though they're absolutely blowing teams away. So against Real Madrid, they lost the corner count 5-2. They lost it against Bayern Munich as well. And I just think that there may be a little bit of value in taking Chelsea just to win the corner count. You've got, I think it's plus 131 that's plus naught on the handicap as well. So that if it ends up in a tie, you get your money as well. PSG are just at a stage where they're not winning a lot of corners. That's because they get down the line and they either cut the ball across or they pull it back for a shot. Very rarely do they keep going to the byline and force corners and going the other way. Obviously, if PSG do get in front, then you'd have to imagine Chelsea going to try and do everything they can to get back in the game. And like I said, it's something that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 months at PSG in terms of corner counts. They're not going super crazy. So that would be another potential angle. In terms of a goal scorer, it's hard to look past Dembele, really. He took his goal really, really well the other day. Kvaratskhelia as well has been playing exceptionally well, taking so many shots. I think he had 3 or 4 shots in the first half against Madrid, and then he was taken off after an hour to get a nice rest. I think he's probably due a goal. His XG this tournament is superior to the goals that he scored, and he's just absolutely frightening. I don't know what he must just be so used to these kind of conditions, because he looks like he's got so much more energy than half the right backs he's playing against. So yeah, and I guess like I say, I think PSG are going to win to nil, so I'm not going to mention any Chelsea goal scorers. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard for me to see. Like you said, Pacho's going to come back in. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Beraldo started again, to be honest, because he was excellent. He
Wow.
marshaled that. He did a great job against Mbappe. But I mean, the only thought I had as to whether how Chelsea could maybe make this a bit more competitive is if they do bring in an extra midfielder and push Palmer out wide, just to try and be even more compact. I don't know who that would be, but maybe Lavia comes in alongside Caicedo, and Enzo Fernandez plays slightly further forward, and that might make it even more difficult for PSG through the middle. In which case, I would be leaning even more towards your play of winning under 2.5 goals. I think it would be a one score game.
And maybe
Um,
puts Reece James in on the right hand side, just in front of Gusto, and kind of play those in combination. We've seen Reece James play a little bit more advanced at times in some different roles. So, yeah,
yeah,
we'll see if Maresca can pull a rabbit out of his hat, and that's what this would be. Quite frankly, the game is a 3 p.m. Local time start, MetLife Stadium in New York, New York. We're looking forward to it this Sunday. Thanks for tuning into this podcast and our coverage over the course of the Club World Cup. We're just about a month out, Jake, from the new European football campaign. We're going to be back at it on a week.
so fast, isn't it?
I'm excited for it, to be
Oh
honest
yeah,
with you.
yeah,
Like I'm gonna soak up the sun as much as someone this pale can over the course of the next month, and then we're gonna be back at it in no time.
yeah.
Until then, on behalf of Jake, I am Gareth Wheeler, and this has been episode 48 of Pinnacle FC.